Good morning.
Good morning.
So, I have a reading that I'm going to do, but I feel like it would be negligent if I didn't talk about the backdrop that we are addressing today and living in today, which was the events of Charlottesville yesterday. So we will be saying a little bit more later in the service, but I at least want to start off with that acknowledgement and ask you to hold Charlottesville and all of the people that are addressing this issue, both in Charlottesville and here in the Bay Area, hold everyone in your hearts. So this is a letter that was written by Rosemary Bray, who is the president of Star King. She actually wrote the letter in 2015, but the letter is dated December 15th, 2034. Dear Sierra, Sierra is her granddaughter, thanks for the phone call, sweetie. Your dad gave me a heads up about your coming of age assignment. It's a good question you asked about how being Unitarian Universalist is different now than it was for your dad or your grandfather or your great-grandfather for that matter. It makes me happy that even though I didn't become a UU until I married your grandfather, you're a fourth-generation African-American UU. In every generation, there have been more of this. And though I know you think I'm old-fashioned, I'm still what they used to call a race woman. And I like seeing our churches so full of people who didn't used to come to UU churches. I think the big change started about 20 years ago in 2014, when our movement started paying attention to the issue of what we call white privilege, though the seeds were planted earlier. Back in the 1990s, we were working a journey toward wholeness with a lot of workshops and trainings that offended as many people as they helped. I was doing my ministerial internship in Montclair, New Jersey, then right after your dad was born, and it was a journey. But even though there was a lot of resistance within the faith at the time, that's where the seeds got planted, as more and more people got used to asking questions, not about what it meant to be black or Latino or Asian, but what it meant to be white. We started to place the emphasis where it needed to be. We started to focus as a faith on all the ways Unitarian Universalists had cooperated with white privilege and benefited from it. Once a critical mass of white people had the courage to grapple with that question, they started embracing another question. What would it be like to be a white ally? Your dad probably talks about what it was like for him and your uncle when Barack Obama was elected president. For some people, it seemed that there was nothing left to do around race in America. But in some ways, things got a lot worse after his election. There was still a lot of racism embedded in U.S. culture, and it was enraging to see it combined with an increase in what we were calling the surveillance state, an increase in local police forces, getting equipped with weapons of war and what felt like a nonstop list of black people being killed by police and not standing trial for their deaths. Your dad and your uncle were barely young adults, so your grandfather and I were pretty frightened for them. But we were also pretty mad, and so were a lot of other people, including a lot of UUs of every race. So we took to the streets, and we organized groups to monitor police, and we demanded changes in the way police shootings were investigated. And we talked about white privilege and getting people to think harder about it. Remember the big yellow t-shirt I used to make a pillow for your room? The one with the heart on it? The one with the big slogan, standing on the side of love. Lots of us wore those shirts. Whenever we had religious work to do, whenever people saw those shirts and those hearts, they knew who we were. A lot of people of color got curious about our congregations during the protests and the town meetings. They started running into us at community meetings and at their own churches or mosques or synagogues or temples. They knew we believed in justice because we were everywhere. And we were changed by those decades of work. I was leading the seminary in California back then, and the protests and the activism changed a lot of our students and the kind of ministries a lot of them wanted to do. There's a lot more to it, of course. There were lots of changes going on in our movement, but I think these were the big things that made our congregations as multiracial and multi-generational as they are today. I hope this helps. Call me if you need more, and I'll go through some of the files that your grandfather wants me to throw away. Love, Grandma Rose.
I remember a time 30, 40 years ago when I was appalled at the elder generation for their lack of appreciation of our totally cool generation. We had grown up during the Civil Rights Movement, JFK, and of course, the Beatles. We could then be found in the Haight-Ashbury and all across the US, possibly protesting the war, speaking out for women's lib, racial inequality, and participating in free love and the Grateful Dead. We were open. Love was our mantra, and we were liberal, and we were proud of it. Now, many years later, so much wiser, many of us are struggling to understand the younger generations. They brought us so many incredible things, such as our technology some of us have a love-hate relationship with. Cell phones, Uber, marriage equality, transgender acceptance, Black Lives Matter, and the painful awareness of a new vocabulary. I had made a commitment to myself that when I was going to stay current with the younger generation and not be one of those elders complaining about the new generation. I remember the weekend retreat of beloved conversations and being confused by new vocabulary they were using. I didn't want to be the only one asking questions I perceived as embarrassing myself. A humbling experience indeed. There I was, resisting the new, which I had been so determined I would never do. I did not leave. I stayed. One of the best decisions I've ever made. It was not an easy weekend for me, but I persisted, often confused by new vocabulary with a few messy moments. However, once our group classes began, the fog lifted, and I realized I had much to learn. During GA this year, I was on the UUA website, and I came across a powerful article addressing the resistance to white supremacy. The article was suggesting to those of us questioning white supremacy to ask ourselves if we are willing to be students. I realize that is exactly where I want to be in this stage of my life. I need to bring more awareness to my life, listen, lead with an open heart, acknowledge there is a major division in our country, and I want to be a part of beginning the healing which we refer to as justice work. I have entered the classroom with an open mind and heart, waiting to listen, learn, stand up for what I believe. Our first principle. I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I am a work in progress. We have the good fortune this morning of having 3 members of our Make It So Exuberantly Multicultural Committee, oh, that was a mouthful, here to share with us what is happening currently and the vision for our Make It So 2020 goal. So please welcome Peggy Kroll, Kevin Shea, and Kevin, we apologize for the incorrect spelling of your name. Shea, which is spelled S-H-I-E-H. Oh no! Oh my goodness! Messy moment. Oops and ouch. Okay. Would you like to spell it correctly? Okay. All right. It is in his talk. You will hear more later. And that's what we call an oops and ouch moment. Yes. And you can survive it. It's okay. Yeah. So, and our last speaker, Elsie Mills, and I can pronounce her name. So I would like to welcome first Peggy Kroll.
Good morning. Good morning. So we were asked to discuss some questions that are related to our 2020 roadmap. That's going to be doing yearly measures about how we are proceeding on being exuberantly multicultural. First, my racial identification is white. And what have I learned in my really short history here at MDUUC? I'm new to UU and fairly new, only 2 years to MDUUC. I feel that we are a welcoming, diverse community, and we can become even more exuberantly multicultural in our ways. We honestly care about the issues of our times and want to make the world a better place. These issues are more complex when we consider the intersectionality of race, class, housing, education, the environment, and income. Beloved Conversations as a training opportunity is incredible. It challenges that business as usual approach to racism, multiculturalism, white supremacy, microaggressions, class, and all of these difficult conversations. It offers us a common multicultural training experience from which we can grow together. By creating here a safe, caring, and non-judgmental community at MDUUC, we will encourage those deeper conversations about our own prejudices, stereotypes, and yes, those oops and ouch moments. What do I believe we can do to promote multicultural consciousness? As we use our 2020 roadmap and look at yearly measures, we can follow the lead of attorney activist Brian Stevenson and his book, Just Mercy, which reads like a call to action as we become exuberant justice makers. He has 4 suggestions. First, we need to get proximate to the poor, to the disenfranchised, and to the problems we care about. Our journeys are tied together. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, as Helen mentioned earlier, used a term in South Africa, the term of Ubuntu. My humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up in yours. A person is a person only through other persons. That's our humanity. We do this now. We practice Ubuntu when we host winter nights, protest jail expansion, accompany ICE detainees to hearings, volunteer at shelters, and co-host multicultural events. We also ally with churches, interfaith groups, and community agencies like Cisco and the Contra Costa County Racial Justice Coalition. There are so many opportunities. Secondly, we can change the narratives to change the policies. Stevenson believes that our current narrative is based on fear and anger. We must challenge these false stories from the past, including our own American history. Some of us attended a film Friday night, Children of the Camps, which talks about a unique American experience. And Ron Ahrens reminded us that the Japanese internment camps were really American internment camps. So that was a change of the language. We don't call them Japanese internment camps. They were American internment camps, and the Japanese were the victims. We can educate ourselves about racial and multicultural issues through sermons, RE classes, book discussions, films, teach-ins, guest speakers, and music. With this knowledge, we then have the tools that we can use for those difficult conversations with our families many times, with our friends, in the workplace, in the classroom, and in the community. We can incorporate more multiculturalism into our worship services. Much of this is happening today, and we do this a lot. Our outreach efforts, we need to incorporate it in our leadership and committee training, and in the nominating process. We can also show up, as we often do, for legislative actions, either here, town halls in Sacramento, and truly change the face of politics, which we knew was getting pretty scary, by getting out the vote and supporting candidates who share our values. Do we want to witness by being a Black Lives Matter church, like Kensington, Oakland, and even Ashland, Oregon, I just saw recently? What is our next step in being a sanctuary church? Thirdly, according to Stevenson, it's difficult work we're taking on, but it's who we are, isn't it? Our UU history, mission statement, and values challenge us to confront these tough issues. We need to remain hopeful and optimistic, yet we need to keep doing the work. In the long run, Stevenson says that hope driven by faith is the key ingredient to fighting injustice. Finally, Stevenson says we sometimes have to do uncomfortable things in the pursuit of justice. Justice can be messy business. Becoming exuberantly multicultural can also be messy business. So, let's get messy together and reach out for justice and multiculturalism with both our minds and our hearts. I truly believe that we are the ones who can make this so. Thank you.
It's all written. That's written too. My name is Kevin. The last name is H, Hotel, Sierra, India, Echo, Hotel. No. The H is in front of the S. How do you pronounce that? It's Shay. Where's it from? It's Chinese. You don't look Chinese. I'm half Chinese and half Danish. That's a very interesting combination. Yes, it is. This conversation happens all the time. That's a very interesting combination. I get it over 50% of the time when I tell people my ancestry. Maybe you said it yourself. I've met one other person who's Chinese and Danish, and that's my sister. That wasn't a punchline. I have a picture of a third boy in the book, Part Asian, 100% Hapa, photos by Kip Fulbrick. In it, the boy writes, I am part Chinese and part Danish. I don't usually tell people I'm Danish, though, because I think I'm a pastry. They think I'm a pastry. Wow. I would add that if you're Danish, you don't speak Dutch. Dutch is spoken in the Netherlands and its former colonies. If you're Danish, the mother country is Denmark, the former crown of all the Viking countries. And you would speak, wait for it, Danish. So yeah, I get it from all sides. There were not many mixed families growing up, especially mixed Asian. There were no role models. I didn't know about Sean and Julian Lennon. It wasn't until I was in social dance class in college when I was face to face with a girl with long brown hair and freckles that something clicked. And I said to her, "Oh, you must be mixed," I said. Yes, I had discovered how to identify other mixed Asians, and we're off to the next dance partner. Things are a little bit different now. Look at the children who came up for Story and are in the RU program. We have tremendous numbers of children that have heritage that is more than white. Without too much thought, I can think of 5 families whose children are quarter Asian, including my own, with many more children that are Hapa, transracial adoptees, black, brown, and red. Over the years, Unitarian Universalism has given me the opportunity to do identity development work. It started at General Assembly in 2004 in Long Beach when I first heard about identity group caucusing. There were 2 groups for their youth, white and people of color, which was everyone else. I didn't actually attend, but I was seriously torn between which group I would go to. Soon thereafter, I went to a national gathering of people of UU color, where as part of a gathering of Native American, Black, Latinx, Middle Eastern, and Asian peoples. What was so amazing about that weekend was being in the multiracial caucus. I had found my people, my tribe. Others who knew what it was like to be stuck between 2 worlds, not able to fit into either. Too Danish to fit in with most other Asian Americans. Too Chinese to be white American. Too American to be a Dane. The nod of understanding. When you recount being mistaken for every ethnic group under the sun. What's really hilarious when I'm thought to be Mexican by Mexicans, or Indian or Pakistani by Indians and Pakistanis. I mean, seriously, do I look like I can grow a full beard? What I have come to realize is that as a mixed race, multicultural person, my experience is vastly different from that of my parents, and my son's experience will be vastly different from my own. I will always be on the margins of my ethnic heritages, never quite fitting in. That's okay. I am the bridge between different experiences and identities. This is the stuff that my family, my parents, were not equipped to understand or to help me understand while growing up. I hope that I'm better prepared to have these discussions with my son and others in this church community. Sometimes it takes a church community to provide a framework for understanding our own lives in a way that we cannot at home with our own families. Now, the racial identity that I most fully identify with is multiracial. We have made significant progress here at Mount Diablo. Multiracial families are no longer unusual here. In fact, it's pretty normal. Kate Newkirk and I have led 3 community circles for people and families of color. There are plenty of potential participants, but we need to have enough people to participate in order to be successful. Just this past spring, I was prepared to lead the children of color in identity caucusing during the white supremacy teach-in. Curiously, we didn't have any children of color that day, when we might normally have 10. I think today we had 7. It's something that I hope we can do again this next church year. In order for Mount Diablo UU Church to become the exuberantly multicultural place we want it to be, it will take the participation and effort from the multicultural membership we already have. The white allies have their own work to do, and we people of color have our work to do. Thank you.
My name is Elsie Mills, and I identify as white. I was asked what I've learned at MDUUC through social justice and other activities about diversity and inclusion in our church. I've been a member at MDUUC a little over a year now. I moved to California from Illinois, lived about 1 hour west of Chicago, and immediately became a member here. I've been a UU for about 25 years. I've previously taken anti-racism trainings, learning about white privilege and the pervasiveness of racism, and participated in a few anti-racism efforts through my job or my community. But I always put it aside when other needs came up, family, career. That's what white privilege is. I can go about my day and not think of racism, go for weeks or even months without doing anything about it. But coming to MDUUC, the social justice activities called to me. There were many opportunities to get involved, to recommit to racial equity. My first weeks here, I attended our 2020 strategic planning work group on MDUUC becoming exuberantly multicultural, and I learned of the priority this congregation has for inclusivity and diversity. I joined the Racial Justice Committee, so I now have a group of people who meet monthly to support and encourage me to participate. I took our beloved conversation class, which asked for a deep commitment, and I felt challenged and learned about my continuing biases. But I now have an even larger group and leaders to help me continue my struggle to acknowledge and work to fight my own white supremacy. I've learned about diversity and inclusion that even in a UU church cannot be taken for granted. That we are blessed to have a diverse UU church, but not all feel welcome here. I've learned that we, white people, must continue our personal anti-racism education. It's a lifelong endeavor, but one I've been grateful for with my new church. I'm grateful for its leaders and its members who guide me, challenge me, forgive me, and invite me to do better. The second question we were asked is, what can MDUUC do to promote multicultural consciousness? Well, I'm very, very grateful that we have staff and leaders here and members who are diverse and are very committed to making MDUUC and our world a more just and equitable place. What more could we do? In this year and future years, we'll continue to implement our exuberantly multicultural mandate. There will be many opportunities for us to participate and recommit to our own work in making church welcoming to people of all races, ethnicities, sexual orientation, gender, and class. We can be open to challenging our biases, questioning how welcoming we really are. We can listen to others who have different, not always positive, experiences at this church. Our first principle, affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person, is valued by every person here. I encourage you, I challenge you to commit to helping our church and all of us to become an exuberantly multicultural congregation. Every month, read a book or an article about white supremacy. Become open to a new language that is uncomfortable. Enroll in our next beloved conversation class. Join the Racial Justice Committee. Use the pronouns our members request. Be open, listen, and love.
Today's conversation has the ugly backdrop of yesterday's events in Charlottesville. As a black woman, I am not shocked by the level of hatred and vitriol expressed by the alt-right. This is not new. Those who feel this way have always been around. They've just been waiting for an opportunity and waiting for the climate that the current White House provides. Many think, but this is 2017. Yes, and in the last few years, while we have pulled back the covers on many of the social ills, sexism, racism, heterosexism, ageism, ableism, we still must recognize that these negative forces exist. I'm afraid of racism and the forces of hate, but naivete scares me more. We have been talking about white supremacy here in this church and in our faith for the last few weeks. In the news yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and in many days to come, we're hearing the term white supremacy used on an hourly basis. I'm sure many of you are thinking, this is not what I am about. I see white supremacy as the pot, the place where whiteness is seen as the central flavor that determines what other ingredients are allowed and how much. The alt-right is the boil-over, the fierce negative energy comprised of anger and a deep belief that violence is an acceptable means to a very exclusive end. What gives me hope, what I find here and in the larger UU community, is the growing commitment to interrupt white supremacy. I love our flavors. Where else am I going to meet someone half Danish, half Chinese? And I have learned so much about Native American values from Denise and others in this community, in this very congregation. Among us are people raised Jewish and Muslim, Baptist and Catholic, atheist and undecided. But we found each other and we continue to build a new way, as we often express through song. As our numbers grow and we are working on creating our vision, there is much more to do. I want to see more of you in Beloved Conversations, and if you don't know what that is, ask. I want you to tell your board and committee members to take it as well. When I walk through Borton Hall, I want to hear people sharing their latest reads, making plans to come to Beloved Commitment Movie Night, which we're going to be doing, which we have been doing for the last 3 months and will continue to do on a monthly basis. I want to see more character, our character, reflected on the walls and on the chancel. I want people to create forums about how to talk to our kids about race. August 22nd, there will be just that very conversation here. Beloved Conversations will be coming out with a teen version as well in the future. In the meantime, I would like Conversations on Race to be an intentional part of our RE curriculum. You can go to solidarity rallies. You can organize a solidarity rally. Contact churches and organizations directly to express your outrage, to let them know that you do not support the hatred that you see happening. Join one of the social justice groups. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so shop the tables until you find something that works for you. If you don't see it, ask how you can create something that you do want to be a part of. There are books to read, articles to discuss, field trips to other churches, letter writing, and not just to the side that agrees with you. TED Talks, watch them at your home or watch them with others. Diversity dinners with other congregants and inviting people from other communities to share their stories. I want to start a column in the Beacon to showcase the experience of UUs of color and talk about congregational activities that create a wider multicultural experience. These are some of the things that we came up with in our Beloved Conversation reunion a few weeks back, and there are many more ideas. Being exuberantly multicultural means we recognize and hold up the variety of cultural values of the members within our congregation, and we actively reach beyond our walls to expand our connections. We pick something to do on a regular basis, just as sure as our potlucks and our coffee hour, and it means we all become race people. As we move toward 2020, here's a thought. For those of you who think we need to do something, I say, make a commitment, find 5 people who will do it with you, and make it so.